At my sister's engagement dinner, Dad laughed and said, "Rosalyn? She's a maid. We don't mention her." Mom smiled into her glass. "Some people are born to serve." A few people laughed. I didn't, not because I was offended. Because I had heard versions of it for years. I had learned that in my family, the safest way to survive was to become useful and invisible at the same time. So I lowered my eyes and continued folding the napkin in my lap. Then my sister's future mother-in-law leaned across the table. She was staring at me. "Wait." Her expression changed. "You're the woman who—" She stopped. The entire table went silent. Dad's face turned white. I knew exactly why. 3 years earlier, my father's company had been close to losing its biggest client. The contract had a complicated renewal clause, and nobody in the family understood it. My father had blamed his employees. My mother had blamed the economy. I had spent 2 weeks studying the agreement after coming home from my own job. I found the problem, then I found a solution. I contacted the client's legal department, corrected the paperwork, and negotiated an extension. The contract stayed. My father never thanked me. He told relatives that one of his employees had saved the situation. I let him. A year later, my sister needed money for graduate school. I quietly covered part of it. She never knew. My parents told her dad had helped. I let them. There were other things. A mortgage payment when my parents were short, a medical bill, an emergency transfer when the business account was frozen for several days. I never kept a list. That was my mistake. Because people can only appreciate sacrifices they know happened. And eventually, my family stopped seeing me as someone who helped. They saw me as someone who existed to help. The groom's mother was still staring at me. "Are you Rosalyn Hale?" I nodded. She turned toward her son. "She's the consultant who fixed the renewal agreement." My sister looked confused. Dad immediately said, "That wasn't." The woman raised one hand. He stopped. It was such a small gesture, but for once, Dad obeyed someone who wasn't me. "I remember that meeting," she said. "Your daughter refused payment." Dad swallowed. "She said the company was family-owned and that she didn't want to complicate things." I looked down. I had forgotten she remembered that. The groom's mother continued. "She also told us not to mention her name to your father because she didn't want credit." Nobody spoke. My mother finally said, "Rosalyn always exaggerates her involvement." I looked at her. I didn't say anything. That was all. The groom's mother leaned back. Then she asked my father one question. "Did you know she was the one who fixed it?" Dad didn't answer. She didn't need him to. Her expression hardened, not with anger, but with professional disappointment. She turned to her son. "Before this engagement moves forward, I want the business arrangements reviewed." My sister's smile disappeared. The dinner was no longer a celebration. But nobody shouted. Nobody threw anything. There was no dramatic confrontation. Just a family suddenly forced to sit with a version of the truth they had carefully avoided. Dad tried to speak to me after dinner. "Rosalyn, you know we never meant." I stopped him gently. "I know." He looked relieved. Then I added, "That's actually the problem." He didn't understand. Maybe he never would. My sister followed me outside for several seconds. She said nothing. Then she asked, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I could have told her everything. I could have listed every payment, every phone call, every night I'd spent fixing problems nobody knew existed. Instead, I said, "Because I didn't want you to owe me." She looked at me for a long time. And now, I looked back through the restaurant window. My parents were still sitting at the table. For the first time in my life, they looked uncomfortable without knowing what I was going to do for them next. "Now," I said, "I don't want to be needed." My sister began to cry. I didn't. I wasn't suddenly healed. I wasn't suddenly free of every old hurt, but I finally understood something I'd confused for years. Being useful had made me valuable. It had never made me loved. So I walked away before anyone could ask me to prove my worth again. Behind me, the engagement dinner continued without me, and for once I was perfectly comfortable not being mentioned.